Get ready, because today we're going to talk about a simple three-step technique that'll keep your audience engaged and satisfied. By the way, my name is Brandon McNulty. I'm the author of Bad Parts, also the author of Entry Wounds, and welcome to my writing channel. One of the easiest and most useful techniques that you can apply to your writing is something called the rule of three. We're going to talk about this today. I'm going to explain what it is, then I'm going to give you some very basic examples, and then we're going to follow it up with some more in-depth examples from the original Star Wars trilogy. Now, as for what the rule of three is, it's a writing principle that suggests that when an audience sees a particular story element 3 times, they find that element more satisfying. And this can be any type of story element out there. It could be a character, a setting, a theme, an event, a line of dialogue, etc., etc. But the key thing here is that this element has to be shown to the audience 3 times. And it's not enough to just show it to them. There also needs to be variation there. In other words, you need a sense of giving a beginning, middle, and end to this element. And I'm going to take it a step further. I'm going to say that instead of beginning, middle, and end, let's get a little more specific and let's say introduce, develop, and pay off. So if you have an element in your story, you want to introduce it right up front so the audience is aware of it, they know what it is, they know what it could be capable of. Then you develop it. Then you show new possibilities for this element. You put questions in the audience's head until finally you pay things off in a fun and interesting way. Now let's take a look at some examples from the original Star Wars trilogy. I'm going to have a small scale example, one that takes place within a single scene. Then I'm going to have a medium scale example, one that takes place within a single movie. And then I'm going to have a large-scale example that takes place over the course of the original trilogy. For our first example, we're going to take a small-scale one. The rule of three happens within a single scene here. And this is the Battle of Yavin, the climactic scene of the original movie, the big dogfight where Luke is flying around in his X-Wing and trying to blow up the Death Star. And the element that we're going to focus on in this scene is the trench run. Now, if you remember, the trench run occurs 3 times during this scene. The first time it occurs, the gold team, they go down into the trench, they're trying to blow up the Death Star, trying to shoot the torpedo into the exhaust shaft, but as they're going through the trench, they get shot down by TIE fighters. That's the introduction to the element. We are introduced to the idea of the trench run. We see that it's a dangerous thing. It's not easy to pull off. Now, the second time we see the trench run, this is when Red Leader takes his group into the trench. They have more success than Gold Group. They get all the way to the exhaust port. They make some sacrifices along the way. Teamwork allows them to reach the exhaust port, and Red Leader shoots a torpedo toward the exhaust port, but he misses. So this is developing the idea of the trench run. It's showing that, yes, it is possible, but even if you do reach the exhaust port, it's not a given. It's not easy. And then finally, we have the payoff when Luke takes his group down the trench, and with a little help from Han Solo, Luke is able to use the Force in order to send a torpedo into the shaft and blow up the Death Star. And that's the rule of three right there. Within a single scene, you have this element of the trench run occurring 3 times. It's introduced, it's developed, and then there's the payoff. Now let's take a look at a medium scale example, and this is when the rule of three occurs within a single story, or a single movie in this case. We're going to stick with the original Star Wars movie, and we're going to say that the element that we're focusing on is learning how to use the Force. Early on in the story, when Luke meets Obi-Wan, Obi-Wan explains to him what the Force is, how it gives a Jedi his power, and so on and so on. That is the introduction. Then later on, this element of learning to use the Force is developed while Luke and Obi-Wan are aboard the Millennium Falcon. This time around, Luke is getting hands-on training with the Force. Obi-Wan's teaching him how to use the Force and how to trust his senses and things like that. Then finally, the payoff comes at the end of the story when Luke shuts down his targeting computer and he uses the Force in order to blow up the Death Star. And we'll do one last example. This is a large-scale example. This one takes place over the course of the entire Star Wars trilogy, the original trilogy, and we're going to say that the element that we focus on here with the rule of three is lightsaber battles. Now, one of the key things to remember about lightsaber battles in the original trilogy is that they always involve sacrifice, so keep that in mind here as well. Now, the first lightsaber battle we get is toward the end of the original movie. We have Obi-Wan and Darth Vader battling one another aboard the Death Star. Obi-Wan is sacrificing himself so that Luke and the others can escape the Death Star. Then in Empire Strikes Back, toward the end of that movie, we see another lightsaber battle, and here's where the element is developed. This is where we get to see that, okay, Luke, who was the benefit of Obi-Wan's sacrifice in the first movie, now Luke has to sacrifice himself in order to protect his friends in Empire Strikes Back. And this, of course, comes after Luke learns that Darth Vader is his father. Darth Vader asks him to join the Empire, and Luke gives up his life for the sake of the rebellion. Then finally, in Return of the Jedi, the element of the lightsaber battle has its payoff. This is where Luke and Darth Vader fight once again, but things are different this time. Instead of Luke sacrificing himself, Luke compels Darth Vader to sacrifice himself for the sake of the rebellion. So once again, all three lightsaber battles involve sacrifice. You have the mentor giving his life, then the hero gives his life, and then finally the fallen hero gives his life and becomes a hero again. And the rule of three here is very important because we need to get introduced to the concept of a lightsaber battle before we can appreciate it in Empire Strikes Back and before we can get that surprising payoff in Return of the Jedi. So I hope this helps. Question of the day: does your favorite movie contain an example of the rule of three? Let us know in the comment section below. Thank you guys for watching. If you want to support the channel, please pick up a copy of either one of my books. Bad Parts is great if you like small town horror. It's about people trading away their sick and injured body parts in order to get healthy again. And also be sure to check out Entry Wounds if you like thrillers. It's about a guy who picks up a haunted gun and he can't put it down until he kills 6 people with it. Also be sure to check out my other videos, hit the like and subscribe buttons for me, share this video with a friend, and as always, remember to keep on writing.